Hi, I'm Jess. I'm part of the FSA team here at Site Platform, and I'm going to talk to you about segmenting farmers. When we talk about segmenting farmers, what we mean is that you should think about broad characteristics which might define different groups of farmers that you work with. Based on the way that you segment your farmers, you can design interventions and approaches that accommodate the variety of farmers that you're working with in a way that's beneficial to them and to you. So keep this in mind for both the way that you structure your farm management groups, but also the way that you develop your continuous improvement plan. So to help understand this a little bit better, I'm going to demonstrate it using an imagined example of a sugar company that's milling sugarcane from 1,000 farmers. For this example, we'll zoom in on 12 of them, but keep in mind that when you do this in real life, it would benefit you to think about all the growers that you are working with and the broad characteristics which would distinguish different groups. And before we start looking at these different defining characteristics, ask yourself the question, how do I currently communicate with farmers and how is support currently delivered to them? Because those are probably mechanisms which you're going to need in order to execute the FSA well through farm management groups or even in terms of your continuous improvement plan. So once I've asked myself that question, I'm going to look at my group of farmers and I'm going to consider what high-level characteristics might define different groups and what information I might already have. Remember, this is just the data gathering step. What it will turn into is a strategy for deploying the FSA with all of your farmers in a way that makes sense to them and to you and enables you to get the most out of your FSA. Perhaps I already have certain information on my farmers, so I might know their farm size or their location, and those are both really helpful elements to consider when setting up farm management groups. I might want to know about their farming practices or if they're part of a cooperative, because that informs the way that I would deliver the FSA. More than that, do they use an existing standard, for example? If they use an existing standard that is benchmarked, it isn't necessary to re-verify them. So that is something I would like to consider as well. Other things to consider might be around the model that they used in order to farm. Is it a farming company? Is it a single farmer? Is it shared services? For example, sharing access to tractors or harvesters, etc. These might be important, but they are not necessarily what will define how I am going to use the FSA. So you also need to consider what are the elements that you really think are most appropriate and what are the elements that you're willing to allow some diversity. Another thing I'd like to draw your attention to are these two farms. You can see that these are big farms and they are in separate locations. They use different approaches to harvesting, but they are both irrigating. Now, neither of them are part of a cooperative, and they are both farming companies. Perhaps my most appropriate approach with these farms is to rather use a standalone farm approach, because their needs in terms of a continuous improvement plan are likely to be very different from my first group of farmers who use a variety of different harvesting practices but are smaller and are mostly single farms. They are also based in different locations, and so perhaps the way that I deliver support to those farms is very different from my farming companies. Now, it's up to you to decide how you want to group your farmers based on all of this information. For our purposes, in our imaginary farm management group, I'm going to take my first group of farmers and put them into a farm management group. The reason being that they are based in the same location and they are part of the same cooperative. I can also see that they don't have any FSA benchmarked schemes that are in place, and so I want these farmers to be recognized for the work that they're doing, which means that they need to go through a verification process. Group 2, however, I'm not going to include in a farm management group. They are already participating in a sustainability system, which gives me a silver level benchmark. So I'm not going to ask them to go through another verification, as the existing standard in place is sufficient for our needs. Furthermore, my two large farming companies I'm going to set up as standalone farms. This is because their needs are so different to my other farms that I don't expect that they will benefit from the continuous improvement plan in a meaningful way. As you can see, I haven't used all of the different elements that are represented on my spreadsheet, but what I can do with this information is tailor my approach to these farmers to ensure that the differences and nuances in their farming setups are taken into account, both in the continuous improvement plan and in our interaction with them.